jobs. I thank you for allocating your precious time to taking your time under this big tent to make Oregon, to make our country just a little bit better. And because we have elections coming up, I wanted to share with you some meditations about why these elections matter. It can be really obvious in some races why it matters. The governor's race, Congress, the president. But a lot of races, it can be a little bit harder to articulate why this is important. And so the job of the labor commissioner is to help people get into good jobs through registered apprenticeship programs and to make sure that Oregon jobs are truly good jobs, right? Where people get paid what they're owed, where they work in a discrimination-free work environment. So before I go on, I just want to make sure, is that something that Oregon Democrats care about? Okay, just making sure. So we care about good jobs, we care about discrimination-free work environments. So that's a big picture. But I want to give you a sense of what it means in practice, right? What it matters, why it matters, who is elected. And so I'll just give you 3 examples just from the last few months of me being in this office. So number 1, for many, many, many years, it has been the policy at BOLI to not pursue penalty wages. So this sounds really wonky, but I'll walk you through it. What this means is that for years it's been the policy that when somebody has stolen wages from an employee, all that was expected of them was to pay that employee back. That's it. So basically to do what they were already required to do. So you can see how this doesn't really incentivize or disincentivize bad actors, right? You can see how bad actors might actually have a competitive advantage over good actors because a good actor is paying their employee just as they're supposed to, and the bad actor, actually they don't need to, and if they finally get caught, there's no penalty for doing it, right? That has been the policy. That is no longer the policy, okay? And it's important, right? It's important that people get paid what they're owed. I mean, it's really simple. I'll give you another one. So in Oregon, many employers are required to allow employees leave for things like a medical condition. And this makes sense, right? We want people to be allowed to be people, right? They're not just worker bots that are expendable at any moment if you have a medical condition or an injury. We want people to be able to take time that they need. Well, one medical issue, a vital piece of reproductive justice, was conspicuously left out of that conversation. So I wonder if anyone can guess what that might have been. Anybody? What piece of healthcare might have been, reproductive justice healthcare, might have been left out of this conversation? Anybody? Abortion, yes, thank you. So, no longer. Yes. The ability to take protected leave for this basic medical care is now clear. And now one last example for you, and you gotta stay with me here because this is a deep dive, okay? I know I'm wonky, but you know what? This is what I do, okay? I like this stuff. So first, I want to take you back to the 1960s. Our country was starting to contend with the racist foundation it was built upon through the civil rights movement. And laws were being passed to prevent formal discrimination, things like discrimination in hiring, discrimination in the workplace, discrimination in housing. And some people wanted to stop there. And others looked around and they said, no, that's not enough. They looked at swimming pools, they looked at lunch counters, and they said, these are places that are about full participation in society. We have to guarantee people equal access to the full enjoyment of what it means to be part of the society. And that is when public accommodations laws were passed to guarantee this important right. So fast forward a few decades, and these laws protect groups that have been historically marginalized and excluded, including folks from the LGBTQ community. And these laws come under attack. So the basic premise that if you have a business and you're opening it up to the public to serve everyone, that most basic premise that you would not discriminate in that work, that was being challenged. And I just want to step back for a moment. You know, opening a business, it's not a fundamental, unalienable right, okay? It's a privilege, actually. Yeah, a business owner avails themselves of our collective investments that we have made in infrastructure, like, you know, roads for their goods, like public education, you know, training their workforce, dozens of laws that incentivize their existence, okay? So, we have businesses that don't want to guarantee this equal opportunity. And one of the things that we do at BOLI is we prosecute cases. We have an administrative court. And BOLI has historically taken the position that these laws matter. These public accommodation laws that guarantee equal opportunity, they matter. So that has been the policy in both the administrative prosecution unit and the orders coming out of the Bureau. But people who disagree have challenged those orders every time, and they've challenged them in court. But luckily, every time BOLI has won. But now, enter this United States Supreme Court. Do we have an opinion on how they're doing? Is it like a, yeah. So it would take hours and hours for us to recount not only the current missteps of this court, but the historical injustice that has come out of this court. But, I mean, including overturning Roe v. Wade, in case that anyone missed that. So, but one particular recent decision of this court has to do with these public accommodations laws, okay? And I'm sure you can probably guess which way the court went. Was it to protect people or not? It was not, correct, that is right. So this court said, you know what, it's actually okay to discriminate sometimes. And you can see what a scary, slippery slope this is. We can discriminate against these people, why not these people? All of these folks, right? Can we discriminate against people of color? We're gonna discriminate. There is now a legal framework in which the court endorses this. So now back to BOLI. A few months ago, we had a choice. We could abandon our convictions in face of this decision, or we could continue to fight for the most expansive guarantee to equality possible. So of course, that is what we did. But you can see how another decision maker in this role might have made a different choice. They might have said, you know what, we're gonna interpret the Supreme Court's view really expansively to make sure that people don't have rights. Or you have someone who can make the choice to interpret it really narrowly to ensure that Oregonians still have access to their rights. To make sure our civil rights in this state are not eroded. You know, it makes a difference. So I know that was a little wonky, but after you've heard this, do you think these things make a difference? Yeah, okay. Of course it makes a difference. But some of the ways that these positions that maybe you've never even heard of until we had an election was, it doesn't fit on a button, right? What I told you does not fit on a bumper sticker. So we're about to have a bunch of our statewide offices up for election. So the point I'm hoping you glean from this is that you really got to get to know why these positions matter, because they matter a lot. When it comes to operationalizing our values, this is really where the rubber meets the road. We can talk about what we care about, but the proof is in the pudding, right? The proof is in how we get these things actually affecting Oregonians. And I would encourage you, when you're deciding what candidates to support in any given race, that you think about this. We can't get caught up in the cult of personality. The person who's charming and nice, the person you want to get a beer with. These are nice qualities for sure, but more important is relevant experience and articulated plan to do the job. And as we enter another big election cycle, I don't want to forget what is at the core of what it means for all of us to do this work. It is that essential thing about being alive right now. It is about self-determination. It is about the fact that we have a choice. We have a choice in how we organize our lives and how we organize our society. Each of these offices, they have a role in either keeping the status quo or helping us to move forward to a more perfect union. We know the choice, the freedom to be part of a future. That choice is supposed to belong to all of us. Because of structural racism, inequality, we know we're not there yet. But that is why we're here. That is the point. That is the point of what we are all doing. So thank you for doing this work. Thank you for pushing us forward to making this state and this nation what it should be. Thank you.
In the interest of time, I will not review my 2019 presentation about Ellen Rosenblum receiving the DPO's Roosevelt Award. Instead, I'll cut to the chase. She was our state's first woman to hold the post of Attorney General. Attorneys General across these United States look to Ellen Rosenblum for leadership. She has been the firewall against the administration of he who shall not be named. Ellen Rosenblum, you're not just a firewall, you're a firebrand. You're a force to be reckoned with. You are our friend and our Attorney General, Ellen Rosenblum.
I actually really liked that introduction. That was really sweet. Loving and caring. No, thank you, Matt. And by the way, 3rd month anniversary of his wedding. Congratulations. That is totally cool. We're really happy for you and Becca. It is always an incredible honor to be here for this breakfast. And the room is pretty darn full. Thank you all for coming over. Wow. And thank you to our amazing chair, Dr. Colquitt. I'm really glad you got some rest last night, because you are going to be on for the next couple of days here. And this summit is just it's important, special, and it is really fun. Okay, so if you missed it, which some of you did last night, the Senator Frederick and I sang a karaoke duet of Patsy Cline's Crazy, and I would say that was pretty fantastic, pretty fun. And look, he made it this morning on time. And Representative Marsh, I don't know if she got up this early, but she and I did a duet a little bit later of These Boots Are Made for Walking. Woo! But most important, it was just fantastic to be in the room with so many of our young Democrats, our caucus, the young Democrats, and also you're going to be hearing tonight from the vice chair of the National Democratic Party. He sang too. So wow, this is a pretty new tradition, but one we better continue, right? Because I think it's going to help elect some really great people, and also perhaps some discoveries that we can send off to Nashville or wherever. But don't go too far. So it's not just for the connections that we're going to forge here this weekend, or the causes that we will champion, or even the Democratic candidates we're going to hear from and elect next year. But I hope that when we return to our communities tomorrow, we will reflect upon the great privilege that we have to be together here in this room today, fighting for what and for whom we believe in. There are, as we all know, there are single parents working 3 jobs to pay their family's health care, elderly people who are struggling to get by as the cost of living and even their educational debt still, believe it or not, yes, that's right, seniors, outstrips their Social Security. And of course, our college graduates, sometimes not even graduates, but casualties of for-profit school mills, they still are out there. And these are people who are burdened with decades worth of student loans and who are most vulnerable. Yes, the ones who didn't graduate but owe student debt. Some of these folks I'm just talking about know we're here today. Others, of course, most of them have no idea. But all of them are here with us in spirit because they know that Democrats are working hard for them. And we have them today in our hearts and in the work, the important work that we're doing. So thank you all for being here. Now, and doing this work. So, I don't want to get choked up or anything, but while this may be the last time I speak to you as an elected at the DPO's Biennial Summit, please do not think of these as parting remarks, okay? I am not going anywhere. Thank you. I have been as busy as ever this past year, and I intend to keep at it full bore between now and January of 2025. So with that, I want to talk just a little bit with you. I know we might be running slightly behind, but I wanted to talk about what the Department of Justice, your Department of Justice, and your AG have been up to. And I really appreciate our newest bully commissioner. Thank you, Christina. You're doing a fantastic job. You're a partner. We work together on civil rights. We work together on litigation. We are, our offices are attached at the hip. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. And yes, you're a little wonkier than I am, but that's okay. It's great. It's fun to listen to you talk. So for starters, in the past year, our office has brought something like 1.5, and it starts with a B, $billion into Oregon in key settlements, okay? So in case you're wondering whether that's typical, the answer is no. The last time we had settlements like these was in the late 1980s. Thanks to the tobacco settlements that still bring in $60 million a year to the state since the 1980s. We have to work to maintain that, but that was an amazing thing that my predecessor, Hardy Myers, was intimately involved with. So I am really proud to have been involved in the last couple of years in the opioid settlements. It's too bad why we had to have them, but the fact of the matter is that Oregon alone will receive, I should say, around close to $1 billion. We're now up to, in all of our settlements, $750 million from just those settlements alone. And by the way, that's on top of the Measure 110 money. So the Measure 110 money is going to treatment. It's going to this issue as well, this horrible problem that we have. But this is on top of that. And so please keep that in mind. I just saw the governor. I didn't realize you were here. Good morning, Governor. Thank you for being here. She's nodding her head like, yes, money. Yes, we want that money. Okay, you guys, we have an incredible governor. Let's give her a hand. one of the things I'm looking forward to is working with you, Governor, to allocate funds from the other settlement I wanted to mention, which is the Monsanto settlement. You guys may not know this, but we sued a pretty darn big company, and we got the best settlement in the country, bar none, for their pollution of our state with something called PCBs, polychlorohybenated biphenyls. Okay, who are the scientists here? Anyway, they're awful, and they're in our lands, they're in our waters, they're in our rivers. It's really a tragedy. But we can do something about it with the $700 million settlement that we got from Monsanto. So we'll be working on that as well. All this new money is going to go to help to alleviate the opioid crisis that we're grappling with and to help clean up our environment. I was honored to help get important gun legislation passed this past session. Thank you to our legislators. I said the fourth time is going to be a charm. You know, the old third time. Well, it was the fourth, but thank goodness we finally got our ghost gun bill passed, and we still have more work to do, but that was really meaningful to me in my office. We see those guns, those unserialized guns, untraceable weapons, and often undetectable weapons in a security machine in a courthouse or wherever, in a capitol. Those guns are crime guns. We call them crime guns because they're the guns that are used in crimes because they can't be investigated. They can't be brought to account when those guns are used. So we're very glad that our state is finally going to be, it needs to be the whole country, of course, because of the commerce of weapons, but the fact is that we finally, at least here in Oregon, have that law passed. We've created real protections for Oregonians' data privacy. That was the other bill that I championed this past session. Thank you again to our legislators for passing a bill that will protect your privacy, your data privacy. I don't think too many people thought about that when the internet came into existence, but we now realize that every day, every minute, we're giving away for free our information, and it is not protected. It is being used for all sorts of nefarious purposes, or at least, if not now, potentially. So we now are going to have more controls. I'm not saying it's a panacea. We haven't really solved that problem yet. But we also have some litigation, some maybe works in progress at Congress. I don't know if we've got our federal folks here yet, but they are working their tails off trying to, really look at this as an issue that is a national issue. We have to protect everybody's privacy, and we have to deal with the tech companies, the antitrust issues, the various issues that are out there that state AGs are working on night and day, but so are our congressional leaders. So thank you to our Oregon congressional leaders who are probably on an airplane trying to get here for their appearances later in the day. We have put at the Oregon Department of Justice in place the most significant hate and bias incident hotline anywhere in the country. I am so proud of this work. And I could talk all day about it, but I'm not going to be able to do that. But it is truly, we are on the, we are being noticed for this. My civil rights director, Faye Stetzwaters, is truly just a phenomenal visionary when it comes to what is needed to protect people. The fact of the matter is that we cannot prosecute all these bias incidents. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, as the case may be, we have a very strong First Amendment in Oregon, even stronger than the federal law, and that makes it difficult to bring these cases. But we are convening a training for investigators, law enforcement throughout the state, with the FBI, with the state police, with all of the agencies in Eugene in a couple of weeks to work on how to investigate these cases, how to make these cases, how to include bias incidents, bias crimes in a prosecution that maybe in the past would have just been some kind of a lower level, or maybe even a higher level, but still wouldn't have focused on the targeted bias and the protected class that has been targeted. And there's a lot of really awful stuff going on out there that we need to make sure that we at least examine to determine whether it should be considered a crime. You probably don't know too much about this, but we actually do the child support work for Oregon at the Oregon Department of Justice, and I'm really proud of that. We've successfully completed a statewide software project that has improved dramatically our collection and distribution of child support payments. And these payments now amount to $1.5 million every day coming into in this state that provide essential lifelines for thousands of Oregon families. That's right, $1.5 million every day in our child support program in this state. And your district attorneys in your counties, many of them assist us with this work. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to. We'll do it for them. But we have that partnership, and that is really important. And probably something that you guys didn't know about, so I wanted to share that with you. In our criminal justice unit, we have statewide resource prosecutors, not only for DUI and domestic violence, which we had when I came in, but now we have elder abuse, hate and bias crimes, environmental crimes, wildlife enforcement, and animal cruelty. The legislature just gave us that one. So we have, what I mean by resource prosecutors is that we help out throughout the state. There are a lot of very small district attorneys' offices where they might have one prosecutor. They need our help. We come out, we help them try cases, we train them, we teach them how to handle certain types of evidence that they may not be familiar with. We have that ability because we not only have prosecutors, but we have investigators. We have actually former police officers at Oregon DOJ who we hire specifically for these purposes. I already mentioned student debt. I've made student debt a constant part of our consumer protection work, cracking down on for-profit colleges, obtaining redress for students who thought they were signing on to an education, but they ended up with a lifetime of debt and not enough to show for it. And even with the federal government, the Biden administration has done a great job of trying to forgive loans. We haven't quite gotten to where we need to be, and as you know, the repayments started on October 1st. So this is a very fraught time for people, and we need to make sure that their loan servicers are doing the work that they need to do and that they are not contributing to the problem. Thank you to the legislature, because at the last session, we got a law passed that finally licensed loan service providers here in Oregon. So we at least have that level of comfort that we did not have before, that our loan servicers have to go through that process, and that if they're in violation, we also have, again, as a part of that law, an ombudsperson who will take the complaints of anybody who has concerns, who's not getting the service that they feel that they need. So that is absolutely critical. We've also been providing what we strive for as the gold standard, a term invented by Dave Frohnmeyer when he was Attorney General way a long time ago, the gold standard of legal advice to state agencies, including other office holders. So we are your lawyers, not private people's lawyers, but we are the lawyers for the state of Oregon, including anybody in, well, many people sitting at the tables here. We'll leave it at that. Okay. You remember how we helped preserve the governor's emergency declaration during the early months of the pandemic, and we helped save, by doing that, thousands of Oregonians' lives? Well, we're now hard at work doing battle in the courts to uphold the climate protection program and Measure 114. You heard of that one, right? Our gun safety laws passed by the people. So when all is said and done, I'm hopeful that we will succeed in these matters as well. And then my colleague, the Boley Commissioner, referred to reproductive freedom. In addition to standing up an abortion hotline, since Dobbs came down, and supporting the passage of laws, ensuring Oregon will continue to be a model for the country of access to safe abortion care. Again, thank you to our legislators. We led the way at the Oregon Department of Justice with the state of Washington this past year in winning an injunction ensuring access to abortion medication. And we had 17 states join us on that. So that's just another example of the multi-state work that we do on an ongoing basis. We're not always in the lead because we have certain limited resources, but on this one I was like, yes, we're going to be there. And I was on the phone calling my colleagues, trying to make sure they understood why it was so important, colleagues all around the country, to join us, and they did. So I was really pleased, because then when what happened in Texas, we at least had that backstop, and we still do. And we'll see what the U.S. Supreme Court does. We filed an amicus brief, of course, opposing the Texas judge just last week. So stay tuned there, but at least we have that level of comfort. Next up at my office this fall are 3 Attorney General convenings on topics of elder abuse, which is coming up next week, hate crimes and civil rights, I mentioned that one, that investigative training, and one entitled No Time to Spare, Confronting the Fentanyl Crisis. And that one is on November 8th, and I know some of you have already signed up for that. I understand it's actually sold out, even though it's free. But if you want to go, let me know, and I will try to find a way to get you in. It is such an important issue that the governor's task force, her Central City Task Force in Portland, that I'm serving on, thank you, one of the Public Safety Committee, is working nonstop, and every one of the committees, it turns out, is focused on this issue of fentanyl and methamphetamine, which is still, it is what is perpetuating the opioid crisis in our communities, and it is obviously incredibly important and frightening, and something that we have to address now. So I'm taking that on as well as the governor's group, which is, by the way, they are working nonstop. I don't think they sleep. Thank you for putting that together. It is amazing. I'm so glad to be a part of it. So I want to close with this. You might be asking, well, what are you going to do in your last year as Attorney General? Well, as if I don't have enough to do from some of the things I've already told you about. Beginning in another month, next month, I'm going to be president of the National Association of Attorneys General. So I know, it's pretty exciting. You know, people, it's known as NAG. So, but I've told them, no, I'm not calling it that. So we already have an issue. I'm like, well, what are you going to call it? I'm like, NAAG, I don't know, but not NAG. I'm not going to be the first woman president in 22 years of an organization called NAG. I'm just not. So during my 11-year tenure thus far, I've co-chaired the Democratic Attorneys General Association, I think you guys know that, and the Conference of Western Attorneys General. So I think it's fitting to conclude with this larger, quite challenging role. My theme for the year, which I hope to bring home to Oregon, is America's Youth Looking Out for Our Next Generation. So we all know this is a really hard time to be a young person, and AGs have a clear role in protecting their health and safety. So if you were wondering what I'm gonna be up to, I'm gonna be busy. I'm still with you all. I'm not going anywhere. I am just so honored to have been your Attorney General for these now 11 and a half years. It will be 12 and a half when I conclude. And the best gift that you could all give is replacing me with a really fabulous Democratic Attorney General for the state of Oregon. So with that, love you all. Thank you so much. Again, it's an honor to be here with you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Democrats. Okay, that's better. One more time for our Attorney General. I am really excited to introduce our next speaker, mostly because of the issue that he works on. For those of you who don't know, I'm a first-generation college student and paid to go to school on my own, and since then have been the first of a lot of things. And I believe that the three pillars of prosperity are good union jobs, a strong safety net and protection for workers, and accessible tools for them to invest in their retirement and in the future of their families. So with that said, it is my pleasure to introduce Tobias Reed. He's the treasurer of our state of Oregon, not to be confused with the treasurer of the Democratic Party. That is my job. Tobias is a problem solver. He understands that financial empowerment, wise investments, and sound management are foundational to improving quality of life and economic opportunity for Oregonians, and key for the long-term vitality of our state. From instituting, where'd my notes go? apologies. From instituting full-day kindergarten to establishing a rainy day fund to boost the state's credit, to implementing a first-in-the-nation state-based retirement savings program, Oregon Saves, to put more Oregonians on the path to secure financial future, Tobias is taking bold steps towards these ends. Now, Tobias sits on the Oregon Investment Council and the State Land Board and oversees public investing, banking, bonding, and financial empowerment programs like Oregon College Savings Plan and the ABLE Savings Plan, which allow families to save for higher education, job training, and disability-related expenses. Hugh and I use the Oregon College Savings Plan to set up accounts for our godchildren and great-nephews and nieces. Yes, we are both old enough to have great-great-nieces and nephews. And since we're dinks, for those of you who don't know what that is, people with dual income and no kids, we put our funds to elect Democrats and invest in the future of our family. And in all the dinks in the room, that's right. And at East County Rising, the organization that Hugh and I helped found, our staff is enrolled in the Oregon Savings because we want them to have a stronger retirement. Since I've been in office as a city councilor in Gresham, I've hosted town halls and events and invited elected leaders to come out. Tobias has attended several of these events and has shared these incredible opportunities with the residents of East County and Gresham. And because of him, a lot of them will have a better future. He earned his bachelor's degree from Willamette University and his MBA from Michael G. Foster School of Business at the University of Washington. And again, Tobias is the treasurer for the state of Oregon, and I'm the treasurer for the state party. And I'm gonna give you all a few tips to tell us apart. First, he's about 6 inches taller than me. He's blonde, he has light-colored eyes, and he actually understands sports. So without further ado, Tobias Reed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Treasurer. We have to stick together. I appreciate that very substantive introduction. And in a lot of ways, you covered a lot of things that I wanted to talk about, too. I'm glad to be with all of you this morning. It is always great to have an opportunity to talk about what's going on at Treasury and to share ideas with all of you. I think it is especially important for us as statewide elected leaders because we always have to be looking for ways to continue to improve the lives of Oregonians. So I want to share a few things that have been happening at Treasury and then a few thoughts on how we're going to be spending our time over my last year as state treasurer. Now, as you're all aware, I had the good fortune before I was elected treasurer to serve 10 years in the Oregon legislature. And I enjoyed that experience very much, learning how to move legislation across the House and the Senate, across the governor's desk. Really important perspective. And that's, it's hard work to pass bills and secure budgets. But what I also learned in many ways is that it is the day-to-day work of implementing policy, always with an eye to efficiency and effectiveness and accountability, that's where the hard work begins. I realized that I have a very different responsibility as treasurer than I did as a legislator. And I learned that as soon as I stopped thinking as a legislator and started thinking as an executive leader, a leader of an entity with hundreds of employees, all of whom are dedicated public servants with a variety of political opinions, as soon as I made that transition, I would be much more effective as a statewide elected official. That's a big deal and a big change. I'm really proud to have served as state treasurer and continue to do that, and I'm proud of the record that we've built. But I've found that in rooms like this, sometimes when I'm introduced as state treasurer and don't have the benefit of an excellent introduction such as the one I just got, that people don't always understand exactly what it is that we do. So I want to give you a sense of that and then talk about where we're going in the last year. Couple of important things. 2 things that I don't do, and I'm sometimes confused with. I don't collect taxes. I also don't set state budgets. But investments, yeah, we do a lot of that. In fact, in our investment division at Treasury, we manage over $136 billion of investments. Almost $100 billion of those are in the Oregon Public Employee Retirement Fund. I appreciate that applause. This is probably the biggest part of our work because it literally affects the retirement security of hundreds of thousands of people, the public servants that we all rely on, and that matters a lot. Think about this. As I said, almost 400,000 people, the public health nurses, the firefighters, the teachers, all the people that make our lives work, that make Oregon work, they now receive or will receive retirement benefits through OPERF. The average annual benefit is $33,350. Those dollars that go back into local economies throughout the state. Put it another way, $435 million every month for groceries, for utilities, for rent. That's important for everybody, of course, but it's even more important in rural communities around the state. And remember, we've all got a stake in this because a dollar that comes from our investment returns is a dollar that doesn't have to come from somewhere else in the state budget. So you might be asking how we're doing. There we go. Thank you. And to make sure people are paying attention, I know you were all out late last night, so I'll just check in. In 2022, OPERF outperformed policy benchmarks by nearly 7% and the standard market portfolio by 15%. That is worth applauding. And I will accept that applause on behalf of the world-class team at Treasury that you should all be proud of. But this is not all of the story. Our pension fund is at the top of the top amongst our peers, and that is not just bragging rights because it's real dollars that add up every year. They compound, and they go into the communities around the state. It matters for every sort of Oregon government, from cities and school districts to irrigation districts and vector control districts. You can ask Senator Steiner later what a vector control district is. She'll explain it to you. The Treasurer's Office is also responsible for taking our state's bonds to market and monitoring our state debt issuance. That might sound a little boring, I know, but this is a room of Democrats, and I know that none of us think that affordable housing and functioning public infrastructure are boring things, and that's what state bonding funds. The more efficiently we do that, the more those dollars can go to that affordable housing and those roads and bridges and schools. So this matters a lot for all of us. But investing in functioning public infrastructure would mean a lot less if we are not at the same time helping Oregonians invest in themselves and their futures. So we're working really hard to make that easier for Oregonians and make it easier for them to do just that. Our Treasury Savings Network, as has been mentioned, helps Oregonians save for college and job training, for retirement, and for the costs associated with disabilities. The Oregon College Savings Plan does amazing work, and here's why that matters. A stat that I want all of you to remember. Any kid who has a college savings plan is 300% more likely to go to college and 400% more likely to graduate. It gets even better, but wait, there's more. That is true no matter how much is in the account. It is the mere existence of the account that makes the difference. So we want to make sure that every Oregon kid has that access, and we're helping to make it happen. We changed the tax incentive in Oregon so that it's not a tax deduction like it was. It's a refundable tax credit now. Works just like the political tax credit that so many of us are familiar with. And it's progressive. So the people who really need the help get more of that benefit. On top of that, we put $25 seed deposits in any account that is open for Oregon-born babies or kindergartners. We get them off to a strong start, and we've made it possible for you to connect your green bag account, your bottle drop account, with your college savings plan. So if you need a little more motivation to drink your favorite beverage, you can add to your college savings with those dimes. We want to make sure that everybody knows that. So part of your assignment from the Treasurer's Office is to go out and spread this word to all your friends and neighbors about how you can help them get to a strong start. By the way, it is not just colleges where these accounts work. They work for community colleges, trade schools, apprenticeships programs. And all of this adds up to the very clear message we want to send to every Oregon kid, that you are capable, you are worthy, and we believe in you. So I want to ask for your help to send that message to every Oregon kid. There are tools here, and we want them to hear it. We're also helping Oregonians save for their retirement. As a state legislator, I was one of the sponsors of what has become Oregon Saves, and as treasurer, I've had the privilege of helping to implement it. We are now 6 years into this program, the first of its kind in the country, and more than 120,000 people now have funded IRAs as a result. They have saved over $200 million towards their retirement, and I hope you are as proud of that as I am. Finally, I want to make sure you know about Oregon Able. This is a plan that is making a really transformational difference in lots of people's lives. It allows people to save for the costs associated with disabilities without jeopardizing their eligibility for important federal programs. So don't forget Able, and help us spread the word on that as well. Now, in case you're feeling a little bored, you're looking at your phones, you're thinking about coffee, let me see if I can wake you up a little bit. Is anyone interested in some free money? Hey, how about that? No elected official in their right mind would get off the podium without mentioning a program we have at Treasury that is returning money to people, sometimes without even making you ask for it. We run the Oregon Unclaimed Property Program, and to explain what that is, I want you to think back about that deposit check you forgot about maybe, or that last paycheck from a long ago job that didn't make it to you. 1 in 7 people, nationally and in Oregon, have something in unclaimed property, and it is really easy for you to check this out. Don't do it right now, but remember, unclaimed.oregon.gov. And by the way, a little tip for you. This makes a great housewarming or host gift. If you show up somewhere and let folks know that they have some money that's owed to them. So help us out with that message as well. Last thing I want to mention is looking forward, sort of what we have planned for the last year that I have the honor of serving as state treasurer. The first thing is continuing to improve our diversity and economic inclusivity. And that work begins by looking internally and making sure that the employees who work at Treasury reflect the broader diversity of our state. I am really proud of the record that we have accumulated already at Treasury. And I want to tell you about that. We now exceed the state's goals on every measure of diversity, from gender to race to disability and veteran status. In fact, if you look at our leadership team at Treasury, our Chief Investment Officer, our Chief Operating Officer, our Chief Information Officer, our Head of IT Security, our HR Director, our Chief Legal Officer, our State Debt Manager are all women or people of color. And so is our Director of Finance and our Chief Audit Executive. That's important to me, not only for all the obvious reasons, but because it actually makes us better. It allows us to better deliver on our work and meet people where they are in a variety of circumstances or their lived experiences. And that's a big deal for me. One of our goals when I was elected treasurer was to make sure that we're finding ways to proactively connect the work we do in financial empowerment, particularly college savings and retirement, to more Oregonians, a broader cross-section. I am not happy about the fact that even now, the people who use our programs don't reflect the diversity of the state, but we are continuing to make that better, and it continues to be a priority for us to find new ways to connect with Oregonians across the state and make sure that they have the tools to build the financial life they want. Second, many of you, I suspect, have heard me say that what motivates me most is the long-term well-being of Oregon and Oregonians. And climate change obviously represents a huge challenge for all of us to address. And we've all got responsibility to take that up. We are acutely aware of this at Treasury because climate change also threatens our investments and Oregonians' pensions. Climate change is not going to be solved by our investment choices alone, but it's critically important that Treasury is looking far down the road and anticipating how climate change and the policy responses that we might be able to implement are going to create risks and opportunities within our portfolio. And we're taking that head on. That's why I committed last year to producing a net zero decarbonization plan for our pension fund that we will present to the Oregon Investment Council next February. That work has been, thank you. That work is underway. It has been making huge progress over the last several months, and we're on track to do it. I want to caution you, this is not going to be easy, and it is not without trade-offs. We have to make changes to the way we invest in a way that doesn't jeopardize the current or future pension payments that we owe to retirees. But I am confident that a thoughtful and strategic plan to do that is within reach, and I am looking forward to sharing it with the Investment Council and with all of you in February. So I really hope you can see that the work we do at Treasury impacts every Oregonian's life and the future that we're all going to share together. I'm excited about the work we've done. I'm energized by what we have to do in the next year. And I appreciate being able to talk about it with all of you. And I look forward to hearing an update at the next summit from the next treasurer. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Labor Commissioner, Attorney, and Treasurer, State Treasurer, not GPO Treasurer. Thank you so much for those updates. I call them wow updates. Oregon rocks because of you and because of our leaders. Those were some great updates. And despite having some work to do, we've done a hell of a lot of stuff that I have a hard time even keeping up with. Thank you so much. Just 2 short weeks ago, I had the occasion to meet a wonderful lady who was speaking at the Democratic National Committee meeting in St. Louis. She was speaking, and I was spellbound, on an informative climate and environment council. That served as an opportunity to introduce myself, to say some things about how great Oregon is, and to ask for a quick photo, and she was so gracious in accommodating me to take a photo with her. This morning, this phenomenal leader is here with us in Oregon. What a moment of greatness to introduce Minnesota's 50th Lieutenant Governor, Peggy Flanagan. She is a member of the White Earth Band of Ojibwe and currently the country's highest-ranking Native woman elected to executive office. Give that an applause. At the center of her work is making progress for children, working families, communities of color, and indigenous communities, and Minnesotans who have historically been underserved and underrepresented. The Lieutenant Governor brings her experiences of building coalitions and advocating for children and families to her office as she works in close partnership with Governor Tim Walz to build One Minnesota. She lives in St. Louis, Minnesota with her husband Tom, daughter Siobhan, and dog Reuben. Please join me in a warm Oregon applause of welcome for Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan.
Thank you so much, Madam Dr. Chair, who is is a first. As a fellow first, I feel in good company. It's so nice to be here with all of you this morning. We don't have mountains in Minnesota, so when I walked out the door this morning, I was like, "Look at that!" Because I came at nighttime. So Nice work, Mountains of Oregon. Really, really happy about it. Minnesota's lovely. Please come visit. There are no mountains. Governor Kotek, thank you so much for your leadership. Tim Wall says hi. And Attorney General, you're wonderful. Thank you so much. Our Attorney General, yeah, my big brother Keith is amazing. Absolutely, absolutely. Treasurer Reed, who also, by the way, is a member of the Democratic Lieutenant Governors Association, and I'm going to see him next week. Very excited about that. And of course, Councilor Morales, it's so good to see you. We are like OGs together, and so happy to be here. Party leadership, all of the electeds, our vice chair, my chair, Ken Martin, thank you so much for your leadership. And Commissioner, thank you for being a nerd. This is Nerds Get Stuff Done, and I love it so very, very much. So Peggy Flanagan, Indigenous Kaz, Giji Wewadam Ukwe and Dago, Gawabagani Gani Kagnan Dunjaba, Manganudame. My name is Peggy Flanagan. My Ojibwe name is Speaks with a Clear and Loud Voice Woman. And when I got that name, my husband was like, of course. I'm from the White Earth Nation. My family is the Wolf Clan, and the role of our clan is to not leave anyone behind, which is why I am very comfortable here at the ODP. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the work that we have done in Minnesota, but I'm also so incredibly inspired by the work that you have done here. I am leaving with a full cup of gratitude and energy to keep doing this work. From expanding voter rights to workers' rights to becoming one of the first states to provide free meals at school for students, you name it, we probably did it. But it's not because these bills suddenly appeared in January and everything was going right. They've been cooking for decades, and all of these pieces came together, which is what I want to talk about. I'm an enrolled member of the White Earth Nation, as you heard, and the 50th Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, but here in a room of Democrats where I don't have to keep it to myself, I want to also say I'm the highest ranking Native woman Democrat in office in the country. And I don't share that with you to be boastful. I point that out because when I was a kid, I did see Native women in leadership roles in my own community and family. But I didn't see any women who looked like me in seats of elected power. So I never dreamed about being lieutenant governor. I wanted to be a ballerina nurse when I grew up, which is exactly what it sounds like. But for a lot of people, it's harder to imagine a Native woman in a role like mine than it was for me imagining my career dancing from room to room and treating patients. I was a state representative when I announced that I was running for lieutenant governor, and one of my colleagues in the House, who I had served with for 2 terms, came up to me to let me know he hadn't realized I was Native American or that there were still any Native people alive in Minnesota. Surprise! And another favorite of mine was when people tell me I don't look like a real Native American. The best response that I have is, oh, why don't you tell me what a real Native American is supposed to look like? And then it's awkward and they walk away. But as a Native woman, there are a lot of people will ever see in a job like mine. I do think about what it looks like for other people and for myself. Consider that I'm a citizen of 2 nations. I vote in tribal elections and am impacted by the decisions that are made by tribal leadership. And like many Indigenous people, I have to manage my dual citizenship on a daily basis. There are 11 tribal nations who share their geography with the state of Minnesota. And for me, working with these tribes, building these relationships is incredibly important because for generations, conversations were about tribes and not with tribes, and often about how to eliminate us and shut us out of the process to solve the Indian problem. I make a point of wearing Indigenous designers to work, like Bethany Yellowtail, a citizen of the Northern Cheyenne Nation. Her pattern pantsuits is one of my favorites. And people ask, are those polka dots? And I'm like, no, they're elk teeth. And in Minnesota, people are very polite, and they're like, oh, okay. But that's a power suit. And I once had someone look at what I was wearing and say, you need to dress more like a lieutenant governor. I thank you for being appalled on my behalf. I appreciate it. I understood that idea, but newsflash, I am the lieutenant governor, so no matter what I wear, as a Native woman, I am always aware that I walk into the Capitol that embodies a system that wasn't created by us or for us, but in many ways was created to destroy us. And if I ever was to forget that for 1 minute, outside the window of my office at the Capitol is a gigantic statue of Newt Nelson. Newt Nelson was a governor and a congressman in the late 1800s who passed a bill that ordered all Ojibwe people in Minnesota to the White Earth Reservation, where I am a member. The law stole Anishinaabe land and sold it for parts. So on those days that my eye catches old Newt, I take a minute and I say, "What's up, Newt?" As an Ojibwe woman, I'm a lieutenant governor. I'm in here and you're outside. So the first time I ran for office was 20 years ago, and it was for school board. I tried recruiting other school board members. What's up? Yep. I tried recruiting other Indigenous candidates to run, but no one else wanted to do it. So when I finally said I'd run, I got a lot of ignorable advice. I was told that knocking in neighborhoods where people didn't usually vote in school board elections was a, quote, waste of time. One elected told me I talked about poverty too much, that it made people uncomfortable, he said. So I ignored all of them and got the most votes ever in a school board election. It was during that race that I learned that I lived my belief that people are experts in their own lives and experiences. Whether I was running for school board or serving as state representative or leading the Children's Defense Fund, for me, that's what the work has always been about. I know from experience that the longer we go without more people like me or like you, like us, in seats of power in government, the longer everyone will just be stuck imagining. Little girls will still have to imagine what they can be that they haven't had a chance to see. And people in positions of power will only be able to imagine what it's like for the communities that are most impacted by their decisions, if they think about those people at all. I heard a lot about those people early in my political career, people on public assistance, people from under-resourced communities who bear the weight of badly written laws and short-sighted decisions. I am one of those people. And when one of those people has a seat at the table, you don't have to work hard to imagine what the impact would be like. I was raised by a single mom, an amazing single mom, who needed programs like SNAP and housing vouchers to keep our family afloat. A mom who, like many working parents, sometimes had to get creative with childcare arrangements. The couple across the hall in our apartment building became like second grandparents to me. One of Minnesota's childcare programs made it possible for my mom to go back to work, to school, to study phlebotomy, which started our family's path to the middle class. But even then, there were mornings when she had to be to work before school was even open, so she would drop me at Teacher Jan's house, and Teacher Jan would bring me. Today, I don't see what I do for work being that different than what Teacher Jan did. Whether it's working to pass bills to get families the assistance they need, or make sure that breakfast and lunch is free and available to every kid at school, it's all just part of being a good neighbor and pulling together to help each other out. And when you're one of those people, one thing you know from experience is that eventually everyone needs a little help. Breaking news, no one, literally no one, did it entirely on their own. 10 years ago, when I was at Children's Defense Fund, we were working on a big coalition campaign to raise Minnesota's minimum wage. At one point, it wasn't looking very good, and I was pretty discouraged. So I called my mom, and she let me have it, kind of. She told me she wished that someone like me was around to fight for us when we needed it. She said, listen, I don't care what you have to do, she said, but you've got to do it. You have to fight for families like ours. That moment clarified things. This is who I am. This is where I came from. This is why I am at the table, and we raised the wage and we indexed it to inflation. I remember leaving a meeting one night and hearing a baby crying, which got my mom radar up. I looked around to find that it was coming from a parked minivan with its doors open. There was a man nearby on a ladder who was painting. As I walked over, he was getting down the ladder to go feed the baby. Is a van your childcare? I asked. Yep, he said his wife was a janitor and had to go back to work 3 days after her C-section. But because he had this job, he could take the baby. It wasn't ideal, but at least this way, they knew that their baby was safe. If you ever find yourself veering off course, a story like that will reorient you fast. And when you make a habit of listening to people's stories and of seeking them out, they will often surprise you. Sometimes when you least expect it, the person that you're talking to will turn out to be one of those people you've been trying hardest to reach. And when you make it clear that you're willing to meet them wherever they're at, wherever that is, a lot of people might find that they're surprised by you too. I'm an Indigenous woman from the cities, and it's just the reality that every once in a while I'm going to meet a person who might be a little more wary of me than they might be of other people. Maybe because they assume that certain policies I support aren't really for them, or because they think I'm not going to have anything to say that might be relevant for them in their life. But I'm the lieutenant governor for the entire state, and I have to put a little extra effort into winning their trust. Well, that's the work. Shortly after I joined the ticket with Governor Walz, we were making calls for the upcoming convention, and one guy said, I was with Walz until he put you on the ticket. And I was like, okay, well, let's talk about that. The man, turns out, was under the impression that I didn't support miners, people who work in mines. So I told him that the most important vote that I ever took as state representative was to extend unemployment benefits for iron workers. I had once been a kid whose family didn't have a lot, and making sure people could feed their families was all I really cared about. And all of a sudden, I realized that he was crying on the phone. That was me. I was one of those people that you extended benefits for. And the next thing you know, he was one of the best volunteers we had on the campaign. And I know that from experience that you can't always tell who's hungry just by looking at them. I always had nice clothes. I looked great. But that hid so much of what our family was going through. Some nights my mom didn't eat dinner, and it wasn't until I became a parent myself that I realized that was because there simply wasn't enough food in the house. That's why relationships are important and why they've been so critical to the success that we've had in our state. Sometimes you have to know a person to be able to tell when something's wrong with them, when it's time to show up and check in. So for us in Minnesota, we knew that there were some families who would never fill out a form to show that they qualify for a reduced price lunch for their kids because they didn't want anyone to know that they were struggling. So we just fed all the kids. No questions asked, free breakfast and lunch at school. And when you understand the profound difference that certain policies make in people's lives, issues that might otherwise be dismissed as minor or less urgent, priorities can clearly be seen for what they are, critically important to the larger puzzle. My daughter is 10. I can't believe it. Back in 2012, Republicans put a horrible amendment on the ballot in Minnesota to define marriage between one man and one woman. I was super pregnant. Ken remembers this. I was super pregnant and worked on the Vote No campaign and was very happy to throw my pregnant belly around to try to get people to listen. I would say I might not know yet who my child is going to be, but I did know that I was going to do everything in my power to make sure that I could one day look at her and say, my girl, I did everything I could to make Minnesota a safe and welcoming place for you and everyone else to grow up in. I meant every word, We won the vote, and then we passed marriage equality the next year. But in her 10 plus years, I look at all the work we've done. Many of us who were organizers back in the day are now in political office. We've wanted to pass these things for many, many years and spent years developing a strong inside-outside game to be able to get to this moment. The coalition of more than 70 organizations that came together a decade ago to raise the minimum wage, these are the same folks who laid the foundation for our fight for paid family and medical leave and childcare. During the paid leave fight, I'd bring my daughter with me wherever I went, plopped her on a blanket with toys. There were people who were like, I love that you bring your daughter with you. That's so great, powerful. And I'm like, we don't have childcare. And so these are the things, right, that we just got to do and we got to talk about. I think, when my daughter was in her first communion class, they asked all the kids, if you could do one thing to solve a policy or solve a problem, what would you do? And she said, free school lunches for everyone. We got it done. But a lot of folks will say to you today, or mansplain to you, Governor, does anyone ever mansplain to you? That any political fight has just two results. You either win and get some tiny fraction of what you really want, or you lose and take a giant step back. And then you get all the advice about how to be content with that and just adjust expectations around it. But I'm here to tell you, you don't always have to settle for that. Sometimes never giving up means never having to give in. Don't get me wrong, incremental progress is really important and we should celebrate it. But if you're wondering if that's all there is, the answer is that it's not. Sometimes you do get what you want, all of it. Sometimes change is big and sweeping. Sometimes there is transformation. Sometimes when you imagine something for long enough, you see it, and not just under some perfect set of conditions. Our big progressive wins followed 2 presidential election cycles where coverage was all about Minnesota's supposed move to the right, a narrative that had pretty compelling data points along the way to back it up. And in 2016, Donald Trump almost won the state. In 2020, he came so close and put so much effort into winning Minnesota that he said if he lost, he would never visit the state again. I hope that is the one promise that he ever actually keeps. But in 2022, something happened. We won a trifecta. Tim Walz and I are reelected. We won the House and we won the Senate, but it wasn't a blowout. We only won the Senate by 1 seat, 321 votes in a politically moderate district. But a majority is a majority, y'all. And the conventional wisdom may be to just approach things with moderation, to take it easy. But we knew that we had spent years building relationships and building trust. And Governor Walz says you don't win elections to bank political capital. You win elections to improve people's lives. So go big or go home. Our Speaker of the House, we have a Speaker of the House, unlike folks in Washington. Our Speaker of the House said, with typical Minnesota understatement, we pretty much cleared the decks, holy buckets. We made the most significant investment in climate action in state history. More than 40 climate initiatives were signed into law. We passed massive expansion of voting rights, and we re-enfranchised more than 50,000 people who had been previously incarcerated. We expanded access to driver's licenses for everyone, including our neighbors who are undocumented. That will make all of our roads safer for everyone. $1 billion investment in affordable housing, affirming and reaffirming protections and access to abortion, paid family and medical leave for all workers, protections for trans kids and LGBTQ youth, legalizing recreational marijuana, including expungements for past convictions, common sense gun reforms, check, check, and check. And we also passed a child tax credit that will lower child poverty by 33% in our state. And by the way, I know that there's a lot of people who are like, oh, that's too wonky or too in the weeds. Commissioner, you're my people. We're in the right room, right? And so let me end with this. And I know you're over, and some of you had a lot of coffee, and you got to go. I get it. But freedom is a topic that makes me think of my dad. He was a rabble-rouser, and he got into a lot of good trouble. He wasn't afraid to stand up to power, whether it was a tribal council or the federal government or the state government. But my dad's idea of freedom was to take this system that wasn't built by us or for us and burn it down to the ground. I'm not sure that he ever really voted until I was on the ballot. But to this day, I will meet people who say, "You look just like Marvin Moneypenny." And when I tell them it's because he's my dad, some of them will tell me beautiful stories about what he did for them and what he did for their people and for their tribes. And other people will say something like, "Oh, okay." I spent time during his final months with my dad. His house was always filled with visitors. And for a guy who wasn't very touchy-feely, I kept noticing how many shoes were always by the door. One of the things I found out later, after he had passed, was a campaign pamphlet from one of his runs for tribal council. Across the back it read, "The right to govern ourselves is indisputably ours." And isn't that what freedom's actually about? My dad would say that our approaches are different. He'd say, "My girl, you want to fix the system from the inside out, and I want to burn it all down." But at the end of the day, neither of us wanted people sitting at the table making decisions for us about our lives without our input. I want to make my own decisions. I want us to make our own decisions. I want to claim that this right is indisputably mine, indisputably ours, what my dad talked about. And if freedom is what you want, then governing ourselves is the only path that will get us to that destination. Because democracy doesn't sit still. You have to continue to recreate and recommit to it every single day. And it will always work best when it accurately reflects the people it seeks to represent. Representation is a right, not a privilege, and it's a right that we can never, ever afford to forget that certain people will take away the instant we let them. Remember when Republicans used to talk about big government? Times have really changed. Now they want government that is so big that it micromanages every single piece of your life. Nothing is too personal. The books you read, the thoughts you think, how you express them, the words you simply use to introduce yourself. The most personal details of your doctor's appointments, your medical records, nothing is sacred, nothing is off limits, except finding someone to be a speaker, apparently. Which means it's our job to build power that is big enough to protect our rights and to protect our freedom. Our freedom to love who we love, our freedom to marry who we want, to start a family when and how we want or not at all, to read the books that we want, to access the care when we need it, to pursue an education, start a business, to pursue the dreams that we have for ourselves and for our children. This is what we want. And the only way to get it is to claim this right that is indisputably ours to govern ourselves. By doing the work as a community, showing up, organizing, doorbelling, voting, and doing our part. In the election that's happening in a few days, and in every election between now and next November, and every day after. Because that is how we win. That is how we ensure that the right to govern ourselves is always, always indisputably ours. Gichi Miigwech, thank you so much, ODP. I appreciate you.
Oh, my goodness. As my daughter says, OMG. So now we know why she's the lieutenant governor, and we are so proud. My heart is overflowing. There's so much that I relate to and so much that I love. Thank you so much, Governor, Lieutenant Governor. Thank you so much. And listen, not to worry. We're going to get you to that first workshop panel on time. Don't worry about it. Thank you again for those powerful words and for traveling all this way to join us. Oregon appreciates you so much. So just a quick housekeeping note. And again, I want to honor and to thank our governor for being here in the breakfast with us. All of our elected officials, thank you so much. You make Oregon proud, all of you. Just a reminder that this weekend you need to wear the lanyard to get into events. We're about to start our first panel workshop. And it's not to drive you crazy about the lanyards. The whole goal is just to keep you safe. We want to know that if you're here, you're wearing that, and that it's okay for you to be here and to go into our different rooms and to be with our proud Democrats. And if you are not that, we don't want you here. We don't want you running all around in the parking lot and messing with folks. So make sure that you are properly identified. In about 15 minutes, I think you're going to want to hear these instructions. The first workshop panels of the summit began. They will be in the Great Hall, Heritage, and Landmark rooms. Ask a volunteer, please. I know we're just 2 buildings apart, but ask a volunteer if you need help getting to the workshop that you need to get to. We will be live streaming and recording panels, so don't fret. If there are multiple panels you want to attend, you will be able to see them a little later, just not to engage directly. I'll see you here. I'll see you back here at 11:15 for lunch and for our congressional delegation. We're so proud to get them out of Washington. Thank you so much, everybody. Much love to you. Thank you again.